Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for over 12 years, and in that time, he had seen just about everything a game show could throw at him. He had witnessed families celebrate incredible victories, watched contestants give hilariously wrong answers, and shared in countless emotional moments that reminded him why he loved his job. But on this particular Thursday afternoon, in September 2024, Steve was about to experience something that would test his legendary patience and composure in ways he never expected. What started as a typical Family Feud taping would transform into one of the most talked about moments in game show history, and it would all center around one simple truth that Steve held sacred. You never, ever disrespect your mother. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you appreciate tales of justice and life lessons, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss these powerful moments that remind us what truly matters in life. The Martinez family from Phoenix, Arizona, had made it through the audition process and were finally standing on the Family Feud stage, ready to compete against the Johnson family from Atlanta. Leading the Martinez family was 32-year-old Derek Martinez, a successful real estate developer who had flown his family out to Los Angeles for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Standing beside Derek was his mother, Rosa Martinez, a 68-year-old woman whose hands showed the years of hard work she had invested in raising her family. Rosa wore a simple floral dress that she had purchased specifically for this occasion, and her eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked around the studio. This was her first time on television, her first time flying on an airplane, and certainly her first time being in California. For Rosa, this wasn't just a game show appearance. It was a dream come true, made possible by the son she had sacrificed everything to raise. Rosa Martinez had come to the United States from Mexico 40 years earlier with nothing but hope and determination. She had worked 3 jobs to support her family after her husband passed away when Derek was only 8 years old. She cleaned houses during the day, worked at a laundromat in the evenings, and spent her late nights doing alterations for a local tailor. Rosa had put Derek through college by working 80-hour weeks, never complaining, never asking for anything in return. She had missed countless hours of sleep, turned down social opportunities, and sacrificed her own dreams so that her son could have the education and opportunities she never had. Derek had graduated with honors and built a successful real estate business, and Rosa had been proud beyond words. When Derek told her he had gotten the family onto Family Feud, Rosa had cried tears of joy. She saw it as validation that all her sacrifices had been worth it, that she had raised a son who valued family enough to want to share this experience with her. What Rosa didn't know was that Derek had changed over the years. Success had transformed him in ways she couldn't see or perhaps refused to acknowledge. The humble, grateful boy she had raised had gradually been replaced by a man who seemed embarrassed by his roots, uncomfortable with the fact that his mother spoke with a heavy accent and didn't understand American pop culture references. Derek had become the kind of person who corrected his mother's English in front of his friends, who made jokes about her traditional cooking being too ethnic for his business associates, who had started to see her not as the hero who had sacrificed everything for him, but as someone who didn't quite fit into the sophisticated image he was trying to project. As Steve Harvey walked onto the stage with his characteristic energy and swagger, the audience erupted in applause. Steve went through his usual introductions, shaking hands with both families and making them feel comfortable. When he reached Rosa, she grabbed his hand with both of hers and said in her accented English, "Mr. Harvey, I watch you every day. You make me so happy. This is the best day of my life." Steve smiled warmly and said, "Well, Miss Rosa, we're going to make sure it stays that way. You ready to win some money?" Rosa nodded enthusiastically while Derek stood beside her, and Steve noticed something he had seen too many times before. Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes, and there was a subtle tension in his posture, as if he was uncomfortable with his mother's display of emotion. The game began, and from the start, things were tense. The first question was, "Name something you ask your mother for advice about," and Derek buzzed in first. His answer was money, which got a decent response from the survey, but it was his tone that caught Steve's attention. There was a dismissive edge to it, a subtle mockery that made Steve's eyebrows raise slightly. Rosa didn't seem to notice, too caught up in the excitement of being on television. The Martinez family won the first round, and as they celebrated, Derek high-fived his siblings but barely acknowledged his mother, who was clapping enthusiastically beside him. The tension escalated during the second round. The question was, name something your mother does better than anyone else, and Derek was again first to buzz in. Without hesitation, he said, "Nag," and then laughed as if he had made the funniest joke in the world. The audience gave an uncomfortable laugh, the kind that happens when people aren't sure if they should find something funny or not. Steve's expression changed. His smile disappeared, replaced by a look that anyone who knew him would recognize as the calm before the storm. "Nag," Steve repeated, his voice flat. "That's your answer. That's what your mother does better than anyone else," Derek shrugged, still smiling. "Hey, it's true, she's always on my case about something. You know how mothers are." Steve looked at Derek for a long moment, then at Rosa, who had stopped clapping and was now standing very still, her smile frozen on her face but her eyes showing the hurt that was beginning to register. Steve turned to the board and said quietly, "Let's see if Nag is up there." It wasn't. The audience was silent now, the energy in the room completely changed. Steve passed control to the Johnson family, but before moving on, he looked directly at Derek and said something that wasn't part of the usual banter. "Son, I hope you know how lucky you are to have your mother standing beside you today." During the commercial break, Steve pulled one of the producers aside and asked about the Martinez family's background. What he learned made his jaw tight. Rosa's story of sacrifice, Derek's success built entirely on her backbreaking work, the 3 jobs, the 80-hour weeks, the dreams deferred so her son could succeed. Steve had raised children himself. He knew what it took to sacrifice for your kids. And seeing this woman who had given everything being treated with such casual disrespect by the son she had raised made something inside him start to burn. When they came back from commercial, the game continued, but Steve's demeanor had changed. He was still professional, still doing his job, but there was an edge to his interactions with Derek now, a coolness that the audience could feel. The third question came up, name something you learned from your mother, and this time when Derek buzzed in and said, "Not much, I'm self-made," Steve actually stopped the game. The studio fell completely silent. Steve slowly turned to face Derek, his expression a mixture of disbelief and barely controlled anger. "What did you just say?" Steve asked, his voice low and dangerous. Derek, oblivious to the storm he was about to face, repeated himself. "I said not much. I mean she did her best, but everything I have I earned myself. I'm a self-made man." The audience gasped. Even Derek's siblings looked uncomfortable now, shifting nervously and avoiding eye contact with their mother. Rosa's face had gone pale, and tears were forming in her eyes, though she was trying desperately to hold them back. Steve set his card down on the podium, took a step toward Derek, and in that moment, everyone in the studio knew they were about to witness something unprecedented. "Hold on," Steve said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I need to stop this game right now because I need to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you just say, standing next to your mother on national television, that you didn't learn much from her and that you're self-made?" Derek's smile was starting to falter now as he realized that Steve wasn't joking around. "I mean, yeah, I worked hard for everything I have. I built my business from the ground up. Nobody handed me anything." Steve's expression was one of pure fury now, though he was keeping it controlled. "Son, I need to tell you something, and I need everyone watching to hear this because this is important. There is no such thing as a self-made person. Nobody achieves anything alone. And especially nobody achieves anything without their mother." Steve turned to address the audience and the cameras directly. "I've been doing this show for over a decade, and I've seen a lot of things. I've seen families support each other, I've seen love and respect and appreciation. But what I'm seeing right now is making me sick to my stomach." He turned back to Derek. "Do you know what I learned about your mother during the commercial break? Do you want me to tell everyone here what she did for you?" Derek's face was red now, and he was starting to understand that this was not going the way he had expected. Steve continued, his voice growing stronger with emotion. "Your mother, this woman standing right here next to you, worked 3 jobs after your father died. 3 jobs. She cleaned houses on her hands and knees so you could have clean clothes for school. She worked at a laundromat breathing in chemical fumes so you could afford school supplies. She stayed up until 2 in the morning doing alterations, sewing until her fingers bled so you could go to college. She sacrificed 40 years of her life, her health, her dreams, her own happiness so that you could stand here today and call yourself self-made." The studio was dead silent except for Steve's voice, which was shaking now with barely controlled emotion. Derek's face had gone from red to white. Rosa was crying openly now, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Steve wasn't done. And you stand here on national television and you disrespect her, you mock her, you say you didn't learn anything from her. Steve's voice rose. Son, you learned everything from her. You learned what sacrifice looks like. You learned what unconditional love means. You learned what it means to work hard because she showed you every single day of your life. And the saddest part is that you were too busy being embarrassed by her accent and her simple dress and her traditional ways to see what was right in front of you. The audience was crying now. Even the crew members were wiping their eyes. Steve took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. I'm going to tell you something that I hope you never forget. Your success, it's not yours, it's hers. Every degree you earned, every business deal you closed, every dollar you made, it was built on the foundation of her sacrifice. She gave you the platform to succeed by giving up everything she had, and you have the audacity to stand here and act like she had nothing to do with it. Derek was crying now too, the reality of what he had done, what he had become, crashing down on him like a wave. Steve turned to Rosa, and his expression softened completely. Miss Rosa, I want to apologize to you on behalf of the show and everyone here. You deserved better than this today. You deserve to stand here and be celebrated by your son, not mocked and dismissed. I want you to know that everyone watching this, everyone in this audience, we see you. We see what you did, we see your sacrifice, and we honor you. Rosa could barely speak through her tears, but she managed to say, It's okay, Mr. Harvey. He's my son, I love him no matter what. Steve shook his head. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what a mother's love looks like. Unconditional, unwavering, even when it's not deserved. He turned back to Derek. Do you see this? Do you see what real love looks like? Your mother is standing here defending you even after you humiliated her on national television. That's the person you called a nag. That's the person you said you didn't learn anything from. What happened next would become one of the most powerful moments in Family Feud history. Derek, completely broken now, turned to his mother and dropped to his knees right there on the stage. He grabbed her hands and through his sobs he said, Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know when I became this person. You gave me everything and I treated you like you were nothing. Please forgive me, please. Rosa pulled her son into her arms, holding him like she had when he was a little boy, and said through her own tears, Mihijo, I forgive you. I will always forgive you. You are my heart. The entire studio was in tears. Steve himself was wiping his eyes. He let the moment happen, understanding that this was bigger than any game show, bigger than any prize money. This was a family healing, a son remembering who he was and where he came from, a mother's love proving itself stronger than hurt and humiliation. After several minutes, Steve helped Derek to his feet and said, Son, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to answer it honestly. If we asked you right now, name something you learned from your mother, what would you say? Derek looked at his mother, really looked at her for maybe the first time in years and said, Everything. I learned everything from her. I learned what love means. I learned what sacrifice looks like. I learned that success means nothing if you forget the people who made it possible. I learned that dignity and grace and strength come in the form of a woman who works 3 jobs and never complains. I learned what it means to be a good person by watching the best person I've ever known. Steve nodded slowly. That's the right answer, son. That's the only answer. The game continued, but something fundamental had changed. Derek played differently now, constantly checking with his mother, celebrating her contributions, making sure she was included in every moment. When they won the final round and advanced to fast money, Derek insisted that his mother play first, saying, Mama, you've earned this. You've earned everything. Rosa played fast money with nervous excitement, and while she didn't get all the answers right, every single person in that studio was cheering for her like she was winning the Super Bowl. When it was Derek's turn, he dedicated his round to his mother, saying before he started, This is for you, Mama. Everything I do from now on is for you. They won the $20,000, but the money seemed almost irrelevant compared to what had happened. After the taping, Steve did something he rarely did. He spent 30 minutes talking with the Martinez family off camera. He shared his own stories of his mother's sacrifice, talked about the importance of never forgetting where you came from, and made Derek promise that he would never take his mother for granted again. Derek made that promise, and he kept it. In the weeks and months that followed the episode airing, Derek Martinez became a different person. He sold one of his investment properties and used the money to buy his mother a house in a safe neighborhood with a garden where she could grow the vegetables she loved. He hired her a housekeeper so she would never have to clean another person's home again. He took Spanish lessons so he could speak to his mother in her native language. He started bringing her to his business functions, introducing her with pride instead of embarrassment, telling everyone he met about the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him a chance at success. He established a scholarship fund for the children of single mothers, naming it after Rosa, and using his own success story to inspire others. The episode became one of the most watched in Family Feud history. The clip of Steve's passionate defense of Rosa went viral, shared millions of times across social media platforms. People called it the moment Steve Harvey showed the world what real manhood looks like, what it means to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Parenting experts used the clip in seminars about raising grateful children. Immigrant communities saw themselves in Rosa's story and felt validated, seen, and honored. Business schools used Derek's transformation as a case study in remembering your roots and staying humble. Steve Harvey received thousands of letters from mothers thanking him for defending Rosa, from sons apologizing to their own mothers after seeing the episode, from families reconnecting after years of distance. He framed a photo from that day and kept it in his dressing room, the image of Rosa hugging her son after his apology. Underneath it, he placed a quote he had said during the episode that had resonated with millions. Success without gratitude is failure. Wealth without respect is poverty. And achievement without honoring those who made it possible is nothing but empty pride. 3 years after the episode aired, Derek was invited to speak at a conference about entrepreneurship and success. Instead of talking about business strategies or real estate deals, he told the story of his appearance on Family Feud. He told the audience about the man he had become and the man he almost stayed. He talked about how Steve Harvey's words had shattered the false identity he had built and forced him to confront the truth about himself. He described the moment he got on his knees and apologized to his mother as the moment his real life began. The moment he stopped being self-made and started being grateful. His speech ended with him bringing Rosa on stage, where she received a 5-minute standing ovation from 3,000 people who had been moved by their story. Rosa lived to see her grandchildren grow up in the house Derek had bought her. She lived to see the scholarship fund that bore her name help over 200 children of single mothers attend college. She lived to see her son transform from someone who was embarrassed by her into someone who honored her every single day. And when she passed away peacefully at the age of 74, surrounded by her family, Derek held her hand and whispered, "Thank you, Mama. Thank you for everything. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on us." At Rosa's funeral, Steve Harvey sent a massive arrangement of flowers with a card that read, "To the woman who taught us all what a mother's love looks like. You changed my life by showing me what grace and forgiveness mean. Rest in peace, Miss Rosa. Your legacy lives on." Derek read the card to everyone at the service, and he talked about how one moment on a game show had saved not just his relationship with his mother, but his soul. He talked about how Steve's fury that day had been an act of love, a wake-up call he desperately needed, a mirror held up to show him who he had become and who he needed to be. The Martinez family story became part of Family Feud legend, a reminder that game shows are more than entertainment. They're platforms where real life happens, where truth emerges, where families face themselves and sometimes, if they're lucky, they get a second chance to do better. Steve Harvey continued to host Family Feud for many more years, but he never forgot Derek and Rosa. Their story reminded him why his platform mattered, why standing up for what's right was more important than keeping a show moving smoothly, why some moments require us to stop being entertainers and start being human beings who refuse to let disrespect go unchallenged. As this powerful story comes to a close, it leaves us with lessons that transcend television and touch the very core of what it means to be family. It reminds us that success means nothing without gratitude, that we stand on the shoulders of those who sacrificed for us, and that it's never too late to recognize the truth and make things right. Derek Martinez went on that stage thinking he was self-made, but he left understanding that he was mother-made, built by the hands that worked themselves raw so he could have a chance at something better. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to call your mother or appreciate the sacrifices made for you, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that behind every successful person is usually a mother who gave everything to make that success possible. The story of Steve Harvey, Rosa Martinez, and her son Derek stands as a testament to the power of truth-telling, the importance of accountability, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. It shows us that real men defend the defenseless, that true strength comes from admitting when you're wrong, and that love, especially a mother's love, can survive anything, even the worst version of ourselves. In a world that often celebrates individual achievement over collective support, this story reminds us that we are all connected, all dependent on each other, and all responsible for honoring those who made our lives possible. Steve Harvey may have been furious that day, but his fury came from a place of deep respect for mothers everywhere, for the Rosa Martinezes of the world who work in the shadows, so their children can stand in the light. And Derek Martinez, who started that day as a man who had forgotten his roots, ended it as a son who would spend the rest of his life honoring the woman who gave him everything. That transformation, captured on national television and shared with millions, became more than a viral moment. It became a movement toward gratitude, a reminder that how we treat our mothers reflects who we really are, and a call to never, ever take for granted the people who loved us before we gave them any reason to.